welcome, I'm Izzy at Minerva. We're going to be looking today at how to hack or alter one of our very own Minerva exclusive sewing patterns, the Tracey Jacket. As you can see, the Tracey Jacket is a nice boxy shaped pattern with a nice button up front. What we're going to do today is to hack it and alter it so that it looks like this. Now, what we've done here and what we're about to do and what I'm going to show you how to do is we are going to crop it. So rather than it being sitting below our hip, we're going to raise it up to closer to our waistline. We are then going to curve it off at the top to remove the collar completely, simplify the pattern down and create more of a sort of Chanel-esque classic jacket sort of shape, but without all the darts and the shaping and everything else. So it's a nice boxy jacket, but with a lovely curved collar. Now, what we're also going to do is we're going to duplicate that design concept of that curved collar, that curved front, and duplicate that design onto the bottom. So we're going to remove the facing and just create a nice band around the bottom. It's going to look good. And then to pick up on that beautiful curve shape of the neckline, we are then going to curve off the front breast pockets. So they're also going to have a really cute little aesthetic to be all lovely and curved. Now, in today's video, I'm going to talk you through step by step how to make the changes to the pattern. So you are going to need to grab your own copy of the Tracey Jacket sewing pattern available on our website, and you're going to need to cut out your standard size to start off with. Now, it is worth saying that on our YouTube channel we have a couple of supporting videos, or a few supporting videos. We've got a sew along which shows you how to sew the original pattern step by step, which is brilliant. Obviously we've got all of our lovely graphics that show you in the booklet how to sew each step as well. We also have a fabric focus video which talks about all the different fabrics which would work really well with the Tracey Jacket, and we've also got a fit video which I filmed looking at all the different types of ways that you can alter the pattern just to fit it to your body shape a little bit better, because everyone has a different body and a different body shape. That's totally normal, and we all often need to do slightly different tweaks and changes to a generic pattern. Now, in today's video I'm going to use this gorgeous fabric. So this is quite a nice weighty fabric. It's got a gorgeous texture to it, and both the inside and the outside actually look really nice, the right side and the wrong side of the fabric. So this is going to be amazingly fun to sew up and to have a nice little play around with. This is called, this fabric is our Minerva Core Range Felted Coating fabric, and it's in a multicolour. It's actually got like a little bit of stretch widthways as well, which is going to give the garment like a nice comfortable feel. So I'm going to show you how to alter the pattern, and then I'm going to sew up the bits that are different to the original pattern instructions, and then we're going to take a look and see what it looks like to inspire you guys at home. So I hope you really enjoy the process as we take you step by step through the pattern drafting process. Now, before we start the video, I should mention what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a self-drafted top. It is made in our Minerva exclusive fabric, which is the viscose challis fabric, and it is called Rose Relations. I was just playing about with pin tucks and that sort of concept with this top, and it was a lot of fun. Okay, let's get straight on into drafting our pattern pieces for the Tracey Jacket. So we've got the front body F, we've got the back body H, and then we've got the back yoke G. We're also going to need to take a look at the placket pattern piece as well, but we'll make the changes to these patterns first. Okay, let's raise up the pattern to start off with. We're going to work with this slit down here to start off with. We know that this notch here represents our waist, it says it here, so we're just going to raise it up above the slit by 13 centimetres. So marker points 13 centimetres above the slit, and then just square across the pattern piece. Same on the other side. Make sure that when you square across, you're hitting the centre front, centre back parallel, perpendicular. Now remove that volume. Okay, now let's create the hem band. We are going to create one continuous band all the way around from the centre front all the way round to the back, and we're going to create the pattern piece so it's cut on the fold. I'm going to wrap all the way around, nice and simple. What we need to do to start off with is to measure the front, which is 30 centimetres, and then also measure the back, 30 centimetres. Okay, grab your calculator and tap in 30 centimetres here. And then add your 30 centimetres here. Okay, so now we've effectively got the entire length of half at the front and half of the back. But we've got a seam allowance here and a seam allowance here, which we don't need because we're creating one continuous piece. So then just minus 3 centimetres, that accounts for the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance here and the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance there. Now that is the length of half of your pattern piece. Draw a line that is that long, for me 57 centimetres. Now I want the width to be the same width as my placket, just to create a nice continuous aesthetic all the way around. So you can either just trace around your placket like that, or you can just measure that length, which is about 10.8 centimetres, and draw at the top. Okay, now just finish off drafting that shape to create a nice rectangle. And we are going to annotate it to say it's going to be placed on the fold. And a really helpful thing will also be just to add a little notch at 30 centimetres in, or whatever length your back pattern piece is, just to say that will be the side seam notch. This is our grain line is going to run parallel with the place on fold, so in the same direction as the rest of the garment. And this is our hem band. Cut 1 on fold. Wonderful. Now the reason why I've drafted that the exact same width as the placket is because I want the width of the placket to be exactly the same as the width of the hemband at the bottom, just because that creates a nice rhythm across the shape and style of the garment. Now then, let's take a look at our placket. So on the original pattern, the placket comes all the way down the centre front, but we've now added this a band onto the bottom down here. So what I really want though is for the placket to extend all the way down to the bottom of the band as it did previously. So we're going to be folding this band in half so that it's right side on both sides, and then it's attached onto the bottom. So the length of it is 10.8. I'm dividing that by 2. And so half of the length is 5.4 centimetres. But then we've also got a seam allowance up here. So minus 1.5 for the seam allowance. And the width is 3.8. So let's just make a little note here. 3.9 centimetres. That'll be the same for you no matter what size you've cut. So we've also got a seam allowance now on the bottom of the front pattern piece. So that seam allowance is at 1.5 centimetres. It's just to make a little note of that. So the placket length needs to be, it's going to be sewn onto the top, which is exactly what we want, and then it's going to be sewn to that point there, and then at that point there it's going to be attached onto this, which has a 3.9 centimetre increase of length. So I'm just going to extend that line there from the seam allowance by 3.9 centimetres and square across. That's the length of the pattern piece that we want when it's all been sewn together, but then add your 1.5 centimetre seam allowance to the bottom of that line and cut the pattern piece right there. Wonderful. Okay, so at that point now we've done everything we need to do to the hem. Wonderful. Let's remove those pattern pieces, and then we're going to start to look at the collar and the neckline up here. So we're looking now to draft a nice collar. It's going to come a little bit deeper. This one's kind of quite high up on our neck, and we just want to lower it by a few centimetres and then add a band. So let's draft this out. We'll drop it by 5 centimetres in total. So mark that out there and just continue to mark a 5 centimetre offset all the way around. Okay, I also wanted to create a band width here just for a bit of style definition, which is the same width as the placket and the same width as the hem. So when the hem is sewn, it's 3.9 centimetres deep. So then just offset the collar by 3.9 centimetres again to create a little style line here. I'm going to call this the front neck band. Okay, and whatever we do to the front bodice, we need to do the same and duplicate the same on the placket pattern piece, because we don't want the placket to be sat really high up there. So draw a line that is 5 centimeters offset from the top neckline there, and just square across. Take your back yoke pattern piece, match it up exactly with the front, and then just square across so you've got a consistent finish across both sides at that point. Now those are going to join up beautifully when they're sewn together. Now at the back, we do want the curve to come in, but I don't want it to drop down the full 5 centimeters because that's just a bit awkward, I'd say. I'm happy for it to drop down about 2 centimeters at the back, but then I just really want to find a nice soft curve that's going to help me join those two up together beautifully. So yeah, okay, and then just continue that 3.9 centimeter offset all the way around. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to separate the neckband from the body pieces here. So let's cut out the neckband. Then just mark the seam allowance on the front and also on the back. Trim the seam allowance off the back and then just stick it onto the front here. So now we've just created one great big nice pattern collar piece. Now what we've got here is a whole load of pattern pieces without seam allowances on. We've just basically created style lines. So we need to add a seam allowance to the top of the placket here to start off with. So let's do that nice and simple and just trim that off. Next, add a piece of paper underneath the two pattern pieces you've got around the neck. Add a full 1.5 centimeter seam allowance to the whole of the neckline for the body pieces. Okay, and then we need to add a seam allowance to the 3 sides of the front neckband as well. Perfect. And then just cut out those 3 pattern pieces, bearing in mind that this is going to be placed on the fold and the grain line is going to run parallel to the fold line, the centre back. Brilliant. Okay, so we've got our neckband pattern piece, we've got our back pattern piece, and we've got our front pattern piece. So these are all going to tie together beautifully. Well done. That was a lot of sort of style lines, drawing, adding seam allowance. There's a lot going on there. So brilliant. Let's now take a quick look at the front breast pocket pattern piece. We're only going to do the front pocket here at the top rather than the bottom one too, because we have cut out and cut off the bottom already. Okay, so our final pattern piece is the pocket pattern. This is our chest pocket pattern piece. Okay, great. First of all, we're just going to fold it in half like that. Then we're going to grab our ruler and find a nice soft curve, one that we really like the shape of. And then cut out that shape. Cute. Okay, and there's our nice curved pocket piece, which is going to go on the top. Okay, and that's it. That's all we have to do for our pocket piece. So that means now that we've done those 3 alterations to our pattern, we've done our pocket, we've done our neckline and our hem. So we are finished with all of our pattern alterations. What we're going to do now in this video is move on to show you how to sew the pattern pieces that have altered from the original pattern. So let's get straight on into that and cut out our beautiful fabric, and then let's take a look and see what it looks like. To start off with, follow the standard instructions. Step 1 with the interfacing, step 2 with the stay stitching around the collar and the front of the neck, and then ignore step 3 because our facing is slightly different, and then we're going to move on to the pockets. So the pockets, I've actually chosen not to do a facing to the pockets simply because this fabric is actually quite thick, so I think it's going to be absolutely fine and hold its own without the additional facing piece on the inside. So all we're going to do to start off with is actually turn and press the top under, and then do 2 sets of tramline stitches exactly as it says in step 5 with the top stitching. So let's do that together. Okay, brilliant. So just like that, we've got our 2 little lines of top stitching, and because this fabric doesn't fray, there's no need to overlock or finish the inside. Okay, next we're going to just turn and press the seam allowance under all the way around by 1.5 centimetres. Okay, so those are all done and they've been folded nice and neatly on the inside. Okay, next take your front body pattern pieces, and you can see our pocket placement is here. We want the top of the pocket just to line up really nicely with the top of the pocket placement. Obviously it's not going to match up with the rectangle because it's not a rectangle shape anymore. So let's just place the pocket right in the middle of the top of the pocket here. Pin that in place and then do the same for the other side. Next we're just going to top stitch with 2 lines of top stitching running parallel to each other, and to the folded edge of the pocket we're going to top stitch the pocket down. This is basically in exactly the same way as it says in the instruction booklet, but we're going to leave a gap up here obviously so we can get our hand into the pocket. Excellent, so there we have it, 2 little pockets beautifully sewn onto the body of our top. Once you've got your pocket sewn onto the front, we're then going to attach the back to the yoke, exactly as it says in the instruction booklet, just like this. At this point, we're actually going to deviate away from the instructions a little bit, and we're going to ignore the bit about the front placket, and we're actually going to sew the shoulder seams together at this point now. So follow the steps exactly as they are for step 13, and then come back and join me. Once you've sewn the front to the back along the shoulder seams, we then want to take our 2 collar pattern pieces. Now these are basically going to be sewn so that they attach onto like the inside of the garment like this to bring up the collar line. So what we want to do to start off with is we want to prep the collar pieces. Take your 2 collar pieces and put them right sides together. Pin the inner curve together, and then sew using your standard seam allowance from one end here all the way around to the other end, just around that curve. Trim down the seam allowances and snip into the curves next. Next, turn it over so that the wrong sides are together and give that a really nice press. Okay, so what we really want to do now is attach the collar onto the main body of the garment. So it's basically going to attach on so that it sits like this with the inner curve that's been finished on the inside. So grab your collar and line up and pin the raw edges of the collar with the neckline. Okay, so now we've sewn the collar to the main body of the garment, just like that, and it's looking really good. So that will fold back on itself ultimately to create this gorgeous little neckband. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is actually just clip these curves here, just to reduce that tension. And then press that seam up towards the collar. Okay, excellent. And once that's done, what we're going to do then is just tuck under where we pressed before and just pin that all the way around and just stitch it in place. Great. Once you've pinned it all in place, then just sew it. Now you can either top stitch it in the ditch, so stitch in the ditch in the crease between the 2 pieces of fabric from the right side, or you can just hand stitch it in place. I'm going to hand stitch it, but it's completely up to you. Okay, so now at this point our collar has now been attached to the body of the garment. It's going to look absolutely gorgeous. I really love how those diagonal lines are coming in and meeting those straight lines there. It's just a really nice design feature because of the fabric. Okay, the next step that we want to do is to fold the garment right sides together and pin and then sew the side seams. And then press those seams open. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to add this bottom facing to the top, and basically it's going to be folded together and attached onto the bottom like that. So to start off with, pin the bottom band together along the long edge. Baste that in place 1 centimetre offset from the raw edge using a long stitch length. Okay, give that a good press and then let's open up the hem of the bottom of the top here and just with right sides together pin that band all the way along the bottom of this garment. Sew that together now using your 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, and then finish using your preferred method. Excellent. So once you have done that, I've then pressed the seam up. Now, it seems to me that it's hanging quite nicely, but I would just like to keep that seam definitely facing up at all times. So I am just going to run a line of top stitching all the way along the bottom, catching this seam allowance to the body of the garment. So I'm going to sew, having pushed the seam allowance up, I'm going to sew just to the left of the seam there. Excellent, it's looking really nice. Absolutely loving these colours. Okay, what we need to do next is attach the placket onto the front. So with the placket piece, we've folded one side under, as it said in the instruction booklet. Now, what we're going to do then is attach right sides together. You can do this in so many different ways. What I'm going to do is just attach it and pin it so that I've got a 1.5 centimetre overlap, so that the placket is overlapping by 1.5 centimetres at the bottom. And obviously also overlapping by 1.5 centimetres up at the top. Okay, great. Sew that in place using your standard seam allowance. Next, open it out and fold the placket in half so that it is right sides together all the way down. Then we're just going to sew along that narrow little strip down at the bottom so that it is exactly 1.5 centimetres offset from the raw edge. And what we're trying to do is make sure our stitch line is hitting the bottom and the top of the garment as we sew it. Snip those corners and then turn that right side out. So then we want to just tuck the seam allowance under the placket at both the bottom and the top, and basically just pin that in place. The seam allowance here should be tucked under the placket. Okay, so at this point we're basically following now the placket instructions for how to top stitch it. So we've folded the placket and hem facing on the wrong side and give that a nice neat press now there. We've also just pinned it in place as well. So the next thing we're going to do is to run 2 lines of top stitching down the folded edge, the inner folded edge of the placket, exactly as it has here, and then we're going to continue running 2 lines up at the top all the way down the side and back again, basically so we've got a completed rectangle of tram lines of top stitching all the way around the placket. Excellent, and once you've done one side just like that, then repeat that whole process for the other side placket as well. Once you've got the side plackets done, we're then going to move on and sew the sleeve exactly as it says in the instruction booklet and attach it onto the garment in exactly the same way. Following that, we'll then apply the snaps nice and evenly down the coat and on the cuff here as well. And once you've done that, let's take a look and see what it looks like. Here is our Tracey hack. It has a lowered neckline with a round neck band, and then it's got rounded pockets and also the raised hem with a lovely hem band there too. As you can see, the width of the placket and the hem bands and the neck band are all the same, just giving it a really nice consistent feel across the pattern. So there you go. I hope you've really enjoyed that. It's really fun to see at the end, isn't it? To see what it all looks like after all that hard work of pattern drafting. I hope you've had fun and feeling super inspired to try something similar or use those skills to create something completely different at home. So have fun with your Tracey hacks. And if you'd like to see more of these videos, we've filmed a little mini series all about how to hack the Tracey pattern. So do take a look at those. They're on our Minerva playlist on our YouTube channel. I've been Izzy at Minerva. I'll see you next time.